Okay, welcome to episode 34 of the Growing Space podcast. In today's episode, I am going to be sharing with you a collection of seeds that I have dubbed the 7 Super Summer Seeds. Say it with me. I love alliterations. 7 Super Summer Seeds. In today's episode, we're going to go through these 7 different kinds of crops. There are variations within each type of crop that I am going to share with you today, but 7 fun, summery seeds that I would recommend you have on hand every summer season, because these seeds are either super beneficial to add to your space along with all of your other summer crops, or they are wonderful things to plug into any gaps or holes that you might have as your plants are growing throughout the season. So they're really a great way of maximizing your growing space as well in the summer months. And some of these seeds even pave the way, help to build your soil nutrition back up towards the end of the summer as we are moving towards the transition to fall. I have some seeds in here that are perfect for preparing your space for the next round of planting. So I am super glad that you have tuned in to this episode. For those of you who are brand new to this podcast, I am so glad you're here. Thank you for tuning in. I try to share this in every episode. I'll just go ahead and mention it at the top of the episode, just to give my listeners a little bit of context for the information that I am sharing is where I am located geographically. So I live in the southeastern United States. I live in North Carolina, specifically Charlotte, North Carolina, and we are in the USDA hardiness zone 8A, which means we have very mild winters. Sometimes we get a snow. I wish we got more snow, to be honest. And we have very hot, humid summers, which means that we have an extended summer growing season and we can pretty much be growing food all year round. So I just like for all of my listeners to have that context as I am sharing information out. Let's go ahead and get started talking about the 7 super summer seeds. Welcome to the Growing Space podcast. I'm your host, Farmer Erin, owner of The Patio Farmer, and I believe that no matter what size space you have, you can grow food at home. Tune in every Tuesday as I share my best tips, tricks, and encouragement for tending to homegrown edible plants. I'm here to support your food growing journey. The Growing Space podcast is sponsored by Plant Club by The Patio Farmer. Plant Club by The Patio Farmer is a monthly subscription service I started in 2020. It's a membership-based opportunity to take your growing journey to the next level. With 4 different membership options, you get to decide the amount and kind of support that's right for you. All Plant Club members receive access to my online community through a platform called Circle. Having access to this platform allows members to share pictures, ask questions, celebrate harvest, and get to know each other. All Plant Club members also have access to free seeds each month, along with information on how to plant and tend to their crops, with seeding instructions and downloadable resources from the Patio Farmers Resource Library. Membership starts at just $14 a month. Join Plant Club today by visiting my website, thepatiofarmer.com/membership. Okay, so 2 quick things before we jump in and we talk about these 7 super summer seeds. Have you tried saying that out loud yet? Because it's a lot of fun. You really should. The first thing that I just want to call out and highlight is to make sure that you check today's show notes, because there's going to be lots of goodies, lots of information tucked in to the show notes for you today. One of those things that's going to be tucked in is a link to my masterclass. Its name also has a pretty sweet alliteration using the letter S, but the name of my masterclass is called The 6 S's to Success. Say that out loud with me now. The 6 S's to Success. is my brand new masterclass, y'all. I just launched this spring. On the first day of spring in 2024, this little masterclass, this compilation of so much information, my 7+ years of being in business as the patio farmer, plus years of farming and agricultural experience before that, and my 6 years of teaching classes. I mean, there's just so much experience and knowledge that I dropped in this masterclass. It has over 4 hours of recorded content. So recorded information sessions from me. They're all broken up into bite-sized, manageable segments, pieces, and these different segments are built into 8 modules. So you kind of work through each module. You don't have to go in a specific order. Everything is self-paced. I like having flexibility, and I like for my clients and customers to be able to pick and choose, take what is helpful to you in the moment and leave the rest for later. So anyway, in this masterclass, I have over 4 hours of recorded content. Again, it's totally self-paced, and you get to choose your journey within the masterclass. Also, within each of those modules are different handouts, worksheets, guides, downloadable resources that I have created myself just for you as companion pieces for this masterclass. I think I have like over 20, I want to say like 20 to 25 different resources built throughout the class. So I think it is just a fantastic product. I'm super duper proud of it, and I would love for you to take advantage of all of the information and resources that I have tucked in to that masterclass. So I will put the link in the show notes for how you can sign up and start learning all the things. Would love to see you in class. And the second thing to pay attention to in the show notes is I have a little bundle prepared for you as a companion to this episode that is a set of my 7 super summer seeds. So it's a packet of each of the types of seeds that I'm about to go through in today's episode. I have a limited supply of these, but I will be sharing these in my online store. So if you are interested in grabbing a packet of each of these super summer seeds, and be sure to check that link in today's show notes, and I will send you a packet in the mail. Also, I will preface that this offer is only available to those living in the contiguous 48 states. So you have to be in the US, and I unfortunately cannot ship these seeds to Alaska or Hawaii. This is not my rule. This is my seed company's rule. So don't hate me. But if you live in the US in the 48 contiguous states, let me know, place an order, and I will be happy to ship you some seeds. Again, I have limited quantities available, so once they're gone, they're gone. Okay? All right. But fun little treat for you. Fun little companion to this episode are some goodies. Yay. So be sure to check the show notes for more information there. All right. So the 7 super summer seeds. Are y'all ready? Okay. Here we go. Now, like I mentioned in the introduction, these are kind of categories of seeds, nothing super specific in terms of varieties or selection. I'm just going to give you 7 categories of super summer seeds that are great to have on hand for planting in the summertime. And I'm going to explain to you why those seeds are so great to have throughout the summer season in particular. Okay, sound good? Let's do it. All right, so the first super summer seed to cover are annual flowers. I will also preface this by saying that as the patio farmer, I am focused on edible crops, edible plants. Sometimes my expertise or guidance kind of branches slightly beyond the edible. That's always my preference, is to work with edibles, but sometimes I drift into the realm of native plants and pollinator-friendly plants. When it comes to flowers, And I have 2 sets of flowers that I want to offer as options for summer planting. But when it comes to flowers, I like to choose ones that are either edible or medicinal. And if I can't find ones that are edible or medicinal, then I like to plant flowers that serve a specific purpose to benefit another member of the ecosystem. I say all that to say that the first of the 7 super summer seeds is annual flowers. And some examples of annual flowers are going to be things like marigolds, nasturtiums, dwarf sunflowers are one of my all-time favorites. They're so cute. They're so cheerful. You can eat the seeds, of course, because they're sunflowers. Let's see, bachelor button, calendula, sweet alyssum. Oh my gosh. I mentioned sweet alyssum last week as I was signing off about the hoverflies, and I just love sweet alyssum so much. Anyway, so all of these flowers are annuals. So quick little reminder, an annual plant is one that grows for 3 to 4 months. And then at the end of that period, it will quote unquote go to seed, which of course flowers, they're producing seeds in their flowers. Those seeds will dry on the plant. Hopefully they will land in fertile soil. And then the original plant dies. And that seed that has fallen is what will regrow in the next season. So there are 3 reasons why I love growing annual flowers, preferably edible flowers in my growing space. All of the ones that I had just mentioned, you can eat. I know, mind-blowing. Yes, you can eat marigolds. Yes, you can eat nasturtiums. Yes, you can eat bachelor button. There's plenty more too. Sweet alyssum, also edible. Edible annual flowers are great for 3 reasons. 1, they're pretty. Right? They're nice to look at. Who doesn't like looking at a little flower? 2, they take up a small footprint, so they're relatively compact. 3, they bring in pollinators, which a lot of our summer vegetables, or what we eat as summer vegetables, are the fruits of the plants that they grow on. Your tomatoes, your cucumbers, your squash, your eggplant, peppers, okra, green beans, they are all, or the parts of those plants that we eat are the fruits of the plant. Having more pollinators, bees, butterflies, hoverflies, moths, wasps, even, yes. Having more of those pollinators in and around our plants that we're eating the fruits of is super beneficial and helpful. So that is why the annual flowers, preferably edible annual flowers, are the first of the super summer seeds. Okay. Now, the second super summer seed is also a flower, but I am distinguishing here between annuals and perennials. So perennial plants are plants that either return year after year. The same plant will either stay evergreen or it will regrow, but it's that same original plant that produces year after year. And some fantastic perennial flowers to plant in your space are things like artichoke and echinacea, purple coneflower, also milkweed. These are all fantastic perennial flowering plants to plant at home for a variety of different reasons. So obviously they're pretty and they support pollination, just like your annual flowers. One of the massive benefits, my favorite things about growing perennials is how resilient they are. And the fact that you can plant a perennial like echinacea, let's say, once. And every year it comes back and it blooms and it supports your space, your plants, your pollinators. They are a great investment in your space and they can be seeded anytime, really, as long as the ground isn't frozen. It's generally not the best time to plant anything, but as long as you can turn the soil and it's not frozen, you can pop in perennial flower seeds. One thing to keep in mind about tending to perennial plants is they continue to grow. right? That's their nature. They will continue to produce and thrive and grow. They grow a little slower than our annual plants do because they're not in quite as much of a hurry to produce for you, but that growth is continual, as I have said. So they continue to take up space as they grow. So just be sure wherever you're planting your perennials that you give them some dedicated space to be able to stretch out, stretch their little arms, and thrive from year to year. Okay? All right. So those are the first two super summer seeds. We have our annual flowers and we have our perennial flowers. Okay. So the third super summer seed is, are you ready? Is winter squash. Yes. Okay. Why is winter squash a super summer seed? Well, first of all, what is a winter squash? Now, if you've listened to episodes of this podcast in the past, then maybe you have already heard me share what a winter squash is. But winter squashes are a hard rind squash. So this would include your pumpkins. Pumpkins are a winter squash. This would include your butternuts, your delicata, your acorn, your buttercup squash, your gourds, technically. These are all winter squashes. Now, that name, winter squash, doesn't necessarily make you think of the summer season, understandably so, but winter squashes take a really long time to mature, and we are eating, the part of the plant that is the squash is the fruit. And fruit takes a lot of energy from the sun, from the soil to produce. The most energy we get from the sun comes in the summertime. Winter squash, because they are large fruits, they take a long time to mature. So while we think of eating winter squash in the fall, maybe like September, October time, they actually are planted in early June. You can plant winter squash from early June through early July, at least in my climate. Winter squash can be a great addition mid-season. If you had, let's say, your spring peas, for example, that took a little longer to produce for you, maybe you were enjoying those all through the month of May, and you pull your spring peas, or maybe it was kale, you pull something that was a cool weather crop that lasted a little longer, which is great. Fantastic. I love that for you. But it lasted a little longer, and now it's like the end of May and you're like, oh gosh, you do not look good. I need to pull you, but what am I going to put in your place? I've already filled my other spaces with tomatoes and cucumbers and summer squash and peppers. What could I possibly put here? I don't want to waste the space. Enter winter squash. Take your pick. Any winter squash will be lovely. Something important to note about winter squash is that they grow on vines, typically, and they're very large plants. If you've ever been to a pumpkin patch and you have seen the pumpkin vines, keep that mental image in your mind as you're thinking about if you should be planting winter squash or not. If you have like an archway trellis, or you have some kind of tall, strong, robust trellis that you could grow your winter squash plants up, then that's great. I would definitely utilize that. If you have some horizontal space, like your yard, or maybe like a nice mulched bed area that you could allow those vines to just roam and do their thing, then that would also be super supportive for the winter squash. So that is the third super summer seed, winter squash. Okay, now, kind of along the same vein as winter squash is the fourth super summer seed, and that is a member. Well, it's actually two members. I put them together because they're very closely related. They're both members of the Solanaceae plant family. So they're cousins to tomatoes and peppers and eggplant. But the tomatillos / ground cherries, again, I'm combining these two. are the fourth super summer seed that I want to highlight. Like I said, they're members of the Solanaceae plant family. And if you've ever seen a tomatillo before, then you'll know that they have like this papery, almost lantern shaped covering that grows over the fruit. A close cousin to them is something called a ground cherry, which was one of my grandpa's favorite fruits. My grandpa Hostetler, he loved eating ground cherries. And whenever I plant them and grow them, I just think of him. Anyway, that was a side note. But ground cherries are much smaller than tomatillos, and they also grow in this little husk. Sometimes they're called husk cherries, but they're really sweet and almost tropically, like almost pineapple-y or mango, melon, some kind of combination of all of those flavors are tucked in each one of those little ground cherries, husk cherries. These and tomatillos are great summer seeds. They are super summer seeds because, again, as you have space freeing up from spring crops towards the end of May or early June, and you're looking to fill a hole, fill a gap with something that's productive and prolific and loves to grow in the summer, these seeds they're great because they grow quickly. The plants are robust. They produce a lot. So I should probably mention, like, having seeds on hand to plant in the event that you have an open space or you want to accomplish some of these goals that I am sharing. Having seeds on hand versus having plants on hand is much, like, in my mind, much less stressful because you have the seeds if you need them, but you don't necessarily have to worry about keeping the seeds alive until you need them. You just have them at your disposal. They're a resource for you if you need them. And ground cherries, they are super prolific plants. Unlike tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant, the seeds themselves do not take long to grow and produce for you. In fact, I am looking at my packet of tomatillo seeds right now, and it says 70 days to harvest. So once the seeds have sprouted, you count 70 days, and that is when you would be able to harvest your tomatillos. So if you sow them in June, you'll be harvesting in August, and it gives you a whole month of beautiful harvests before it's time to transition to fall. Okay, so tomatillos and ground cherries, those are our fourth super summer seed. Number 5 is one of my all-time favorite crops. I am slightly obsessed with this little herb. I like to plant it in almost every single one of my raised beds at home. I have planted so much of it in the past from seed that now I rarely have to plant more because it just comes back every year. I let the plants dry out in my raised beds. I let the seeds kind of drift and go where they would like to. And that helps to reseed and continue reaping the benefits of this 5th super summer seed. And that is Tulsi basil. Can I get a round of applause for Tulsi basil? Hoorah. Now, maybe you are unfamiliar with this variety of basil. This is also called holy basil or sacred basil. Tulsi basil does not taste like traditional Italian basil. I would definitely refer to this more as a medicinal basil rather than a culinary basil. It has a nice floral, fruity aroma to it, which really comes through like when you are watering. I'm always smelling this beautiful Tulsi aroma. It's also quick to flower, which, with Italian basil is not ideal. But with Tulsi basil, it's really great for our pollinators, again, supporting their wellness and attracting them to our space to pollinate all of our flowers. And you can make delicious tea and tinctures if you're into making tinctures, but you can make a delicious Tulsi basil tea. Tulsi basil is an adaptogenic herb, so it's great at managing stress levels. It's a very calming herb. It's a good full body tonic to just help you reset. And it loves growing in the summertime, just like basil, typical Italian basil does. And yeah, it's just a great way to keep your growing space and you feeling nice and refreshed through the summer season. So Tulsi basil for the win. I am obsessed. So that is number 5, Tulsi basil. Number 6 is going to be members of the Chenopodiaceae plant family, which is a little spoiler. I'm going to do a whole episode on this plant family later this year when I pick up with that mini series. If you're new to this podcast, I am doing a mini series off and on this year all about meeting the plant family. So I take one specific plant family and do a whole episode talking about the different members, the different characteristics, and things to keep in mind as you are growing those. So keep your eyes peeled for a Chenopodiaceae plant family episode. Go back, flip through the episodes to listen to past Meet the Plant Family episodes. But the Chenopodiaceae plant family includes Swiss chard and beets, and also spinach. But Swiss chard and beets are great. They are super summer seeds to plant in your space as you have spaces opening up. So these plants are biennials. That means that they produce seed in their second year of growing, meaning that they are resilient across all the seasons, the warm seasons, the cool seasons. They thrive through it all, and they have a relatively small footprint too. So beets being root vegetables, they only need a spacing of 2 to 4 inches between plants. Swiss chard, you're eating the leafy greens of Swiss chard typically. You can grow this as, like small salad greens if you would like, or you can grow it to be full, palm-sized leaves. Both of these seeds are great versatile options for filling in the gaps of your summer growing space as they open up. And you can sow them in May. You can sow them in August. You can sow them in July. You can sow them whenever you want, as long as the ground is not frozen. So our last super summer seed is going to be, can I get a drum roll? It's beans. If you'll remember from our Meet the Plant Family episode on the Fabaceae plant family, beans are a legume. As they grow, they help to create nitrogen in the soil. There are so many different kinds of beans that you can grow. You can grow bush beans. Bush beans are more compact plants. You can sow seeds every 3 to 4 inches to grow bush beans. There are also pole beans. So pole beans are going to be beans that grow on vining plants. They typically need a trellis or some kind of structure to support their vertical growth. You can also grow like edamame. That's fun. You can grow like a dry bean if you would like a black bean or garbanzo bean. Any of those beans are going to fix nitrogen in the soil. In other words, they take things that are in the soil. Their little roots have these nodules on them that create and release nitrogen as they grow in the soil. Now, for those of you who might be new to understanding plant nutrition, nitrogen is one of the most important macronutrients that our plants need as they grow. All plants are going to need nitrogen at some point. Some plants need more nitrogen than others to grow and thrive and produce lots of yummy harvests for you. Nitrogen is what feeds the leafy green parts of your plant. It's what helps to support the leaves, the stems, and so nitrogen helps plants conduct photosynthesis, which of course is super important for overall plant health and function and production. As nitrogen feeds the leafy green parts of our plants, it is super important that we have a high nitrogen soil when we are growing our leafy greens. right? So whenever we are planting lettuce, spinach, arugula, broccoli even, Swiss chard would benefit from extra nitrogen. So would kale, collards, broccoli, I already said broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage. All of those really love to have a lot of nitrogen. Those crops are typically things that we think about sowing and growing in the fall or the spring in the cool season. One more thing about beans, that they grow pretty quickly. They don't take a long time to mature. In fact, I am looking at my packet of rattlesnake pole beans here, and there's 65 days to maturity. Beans need about 5 to 7 days to sprout, and then they take 65 days after that to mature. So if you're planting those in June, then, by mid-August, you'll be harvesting your beans, which is perfect timing to get ready for the fall planting season, which should happen sometime in September. The earlier, the better, but sometime in September. So if you're planting beans ahead of where you're going to plant your greens, then you're already working to build up your soil foundation for the next crop that's coming. So it's a good rotational practice to throw a legume. If you have space opening up in your growing space this summer, throw a legume in there, throw some kind of bean in there, let it grow, harvest it, and then instead of pulling the plant out to plant again for the fall season, just cut the plants right above the soil and leave the roots. By leaving the roots, you're leaving all of that beautiful nitrogen that's been fixed just by the plants growing and producing harvests for you. Cool? Those are the 7 super summer seeds. We have, just to recap, we have annual flowers, we have perennial flowers, we have winter squash, then tomatillos or ground cherries, we have our Tulsi basil, we have chard/beets, members of the Fabaceae plant family, and then we have delightful little beans. Those are your 7 super summer seeds. I recommend having some of these available throughout the warm season, just in case something comes up. Literally, something comes up out of the soil and you need to replace it. You have these at your disposal. So just find what works for you. Like I mentioned at the top of this episode, I do have a limited supply of packets of each of these 7 categories or types of seeds available. You can use the link in the show notes today to place an order, and I will send you an envelope with 1 packet of each of these 7 types of seeds. Cool? All right. So be sure to check the show notes for that. For next week's episode, I am excited because I am going to be sharing with you another interview that I have done. Earlier this year, I sat down with someone who's become a good friend of mine. So he essentially has a business that has a similar structure to mine, but instead of teaching people how to grow food at home, he works with people who are interested in keeping bees. Yes. Oh my gosh. I am having a beekeeper come on the show for a little interview. I am so excited. This beekeeper and business owner is actually my neighbor. Oh my gosh, what madness is this universe that it would put the two of us next to each other, literally a stone's throw away from each other. Oh, serendipity. I love it. So anyway, join me next week as I sit down with my neighbor, Justin, of Queen's Orders Honey, a local business here in the Charlotte area who works with people who are interested in tending bees, keeping bees at home. And this episode is perfectly timed because May 20th, in case you didn't know, May 20th is World Bee Day. Yes, World Bee Day. So this is just perfect timing. Oh, It's going to be delightful. So anyway, tune in next week for my conversation with Justin, the beekeeper. So if you've listened to this podcast in the past, then you will know at the end of every episode, I like to share just like a tiny little morsel of information, a little tidbit to sign off on. And this week, I don't know how I feel about it. I really don't. I have mixed emotions for what I'm about to share with you. So prepare yourselves. But my growing space, this started last year. My growing space has been blessed. Let's use the word blessed. Has been blessed with a particular fungus. Now, I love fungus because fungi in the soil works with our plants, their root systems, to help release nutrients and make things bioavailable to our plants. It's a great little network and support system. So I'm a huge fan of fungi. I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm about to share with you. But my backyard growing space is currently blessed with a particular kind of fungus called stinkhorn. Yes, stink, horn, like smelly and antler type structure. Stinkhorn fungus. Not just any stinkhorn fungus, but a bright red, spiky stinkhorn fungus. How do I know this? Because fungus in the soil, when it fruits or when it's mature, when it's nice and happy, it forms what? Mushrooms, of course. So I have these bright red, spiky stinkhorn mushrooms popping up all over my growing space. They are called stinkhorn for a reason. They stink. Oh gosh, you guys, they smell so bad. Now, there's only one good thing about having the stinkhorn mushrooms popping up from my perspective, and that is that it's an indication of a healthy soil function. So I'm happy to celebrate this. But they are just so dang smelly, you guys. Like, it's putrid. And it's really kind of discouraging me right now from wanting to be out with my plants. I mean, obviously I do because I can overcome it, right? It's worth it to go check on my plants. But they are just really smelly. And they're a little alarming to see. I don't know how this happened, but I magically have a stinkhorn mushroom variety in my backyard that's native to Australia. So it's come in on something. I have no idea how this fungus got to my backyard, but it is native to Australia. I will put a link to the variety in the show notes, and you guys you have to look at it. It's the wildest thing. Literally bright red. And then it's got like this oozy goozy, like poopy brown ring around the very center. Luckily, stinkhorn season is short-lived. So I'm hoping that I am on the mend and they will soon go dormant again. And I don't have to deal with these until this time next year. So lucky me. Thanks for hearing about my stinkhorn situation. I would love to know what kind of mushrooms you have popping up in your yard. Mushrooms are not bad. They are great for your plants. The stinkhorn mushroom, I will also mention, is not toxic to humans or to pets. So even though it looks disgusting and scary and it smells awful, if you happen to eat one, dear God, I'm sorry that you ate one. You put that anywhere close to your face, but it's not going to hurt you. So that's good. Anyway, so there's your fun little fungi fact tidbit for the day. And I will see you back here again next week as we talk to my friend, Justin, the beekeeper. He's great. Bees are great. Tune in next week. And I hope you have a good day. Bye, friends. Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode of the Growing Space Podcast. I hope that you learned something new and that you were able to take this new information home with you and implement into your growing journey and into your growing space. As always, I am here to support you and your food growing journey. If you'd like to learn more about the different services and resources and membership programs that I run through The Patio Farmer, please check out my website, thepatiofarmer.com. You can also follow me on social media. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and oh my gosh, most recently, TikTok. Wow. I know. Here I am. Patio Farmer is on TikTok. It's very exciting. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give it a like or a rating or a review if you want. Maybe share a little comment about your favorite part of the episode. Share it with a friend. The more interactions I get with my little podcast online, the more I'm able to help people just like you in their food growing journeys. As always, thanks for being here, and I will see you again next week.